Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the Court with the Digester. How are we, good people? Okay, so March intake for the Warrior Teacher Programme. Just to remind you, see my pinned tweet or information below. If you want to come along and join us, please do. The fight is intensifying. There's plenty to do. We've got about 15 years worth of people that have been indoctrinated into all this to change their minds one person at a time, which is what we do. So please do. If you can buy me a coffee, that'd be grateful. Super thanks. Anything you can do to help, please do help me if you can. This is an interesting one for me because it's somebody I met about a year ago, mate of mine and I. We toodled down to Doncaster, which was a place I'd not been to for many years. I went to Doncaster Racecourse, stayed overnight. You know, it was quite nice to drink in the bar, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we'd gone down deliberately because we were looking at what we could do for funding for training for early years PhD students in things such as teamwork, leadership, collaboration, you know, all the stuff that helps the oil, helps the engine work. And it was a really interesting couple of days because it was based upon the government's levelling up agenda. Now, everybody's gone, and levelling up agenda isn't working. Well, you know, I think it's a big pill, and it takes many, many years to get going. But it was fortunate that I got to see Tom Tugendhat speak. And Tom Tugendhat strikes me as a very reasonable man. We briefly smiled and, you know, nodded like as men do. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Right? And he's... There's something in the Daily Telegraph. Is it the Telegraph or the Times? I can't see from here. It's the Times, actually. I'm lying. Right? There's something in the Times which is interesting because it ties in with something that happened a while ago with me and Harry Miller. Now, Harry Miller, as you know, is a We Are Fair cop. Harry was one of the first people I ever spoke to when this whole bubo became so big. My attention was attracted to it, this gender, you know, race, critical justice, all that palaver. And so this rung a bell when I read this. And I thought, we'll tell the folks about this one because I think it's interesting. So from Doncaster, levelling up, to Harry Miller, conversation about the whole thing. And finally to Tom Tugendhat once again, coming forward and saying something that strangely enough ties in with what Harry and I said many years ago. Harry thought it was interesting because I said it. And I don't think we've really pursued it fully yet, but it looks like we may be going to, which is I think that critical social justice is a prevent issue. It is a prevent issue in that their activities are terrorist activities. Now people are going to go, oh, you're a bit extreme there, and for somebody to call me extreme is something. Because obviously I'm as fairly hardline on this as people can get, right? So, got to have the bookends. So from my perspective, I think it's really interesting that Tom has done this. So Let's look at what Tom's done. So the call comes from the security minister as he orders a review into biased civil servant training. The call comes after a woman who attended a counter-terrorism course at King's College London said its content amounted to indoctrination, right? The reviewer of the government's counter-radicalisation strategy has said it's outrageous that civil servants receive politically biased anti-terrorism training. Sir William Shawcross, who produced the independent report on the Prevent programme, told The Times that he was dismayed to hear he had been personally criticised during a supposedly impartial course for Mandarins. Tom Tugendhat, the security minister, has ordered a review into the Home Office's use of external courses after it was claimed that the training session put on by King's College London's Security Studies Department amounted to indoctrination. About 40 members of staff from the Foreign Office, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Defence and Home Office recently attended the 3-day series of lectures and workshops, according to a former civil servant who was there. Alongside academics, speakers including a former Permanent Secretary of the Home Office, a former Defence Minister and a former head of GCHQ. Anna Stanley, who worked in open source intelligence at the Foreign Office, was among the cohort and claimed that they were told by one lecturer that figures such as the writer Douglas Murray and podcaster Joe Rogan were examples of the far right. They're going to paint us as terrorists. That's what they're doing. The academic, who has been identified as Peter Newman, Professor of Security Studies, is reported to have said they have millions of followers. To deplatform them would cause issues, so society needs to find other ways to suppress them. They are going to make us terrorists. They're going to imply that we are a threat to national security when we know that transgenderism is a threat to national security. They are, as always, folks, they are what they accuse us of being, right? Stanley Newman allegedly went on to derogatively describe Shawcross as the type of person who would say all current counter-terrorism professionals are woke, adding, he is of that ilk. The cult is everywhere. The attendee then gave a presentation criticising the government's prevent strategy as inherently racism because it focuses on Islamist extremism, despite 70% of UK terror attacks being linked to Islamism. They are nuts. This is the liberal left. Absolutely insane. Newman's the bloody problem. Shawcross, who is also the Commissioner for Public Appointments, said, it's outrageous that any academic should talk of suppressing any journalist, and Douglas Murray is one of the bravest and most impressive of British journalists. His work on the threats facing Britain, and indeed the Western world, has been vital for years. As for Mr. Newman's criticism of me and my review of Prevent, I am dismayed. Dyspeptic. I am dismayed that an expert on counter-terrorism such as he refuses to recognise the evidence that the most lethal terrorist threat to Britain comes from Islamist terrorists, not from the far right. My review sets out this reality calmly and clearly. Whitehall officials were also said to have been taught to question what is terrorism by John Gearson, the head of the School of Security Studies, who is reported to have told them that one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. A third lecturer, Tim Willisey, I can't be bothered. Tim was noted as having written an article saying Israeli crisis meetings could be affected by a desire for revenge and setting out why restraint in counter-terrorism is so important. Stanley said prestigious educational institutions are delivering politically biased anti-government training amounting to indoctrination. It confirmed my fears that extremism and terrorism are misunderstood by civil servants to the point of being a national security risk. I would go so further and say, your Prevent programme should be turned inward upon them, for they and their social studies friends are the problem. Amid an outcry as details of the course's content emerged this week, Tom Tuggenhack ordered a review in training sessions given to government professionals. Give us a shout, Tom, I'll come and do it for you, right? Speaking in the Commons on Tuesday, he told MPs if courses aren't high quality and politically neutral, then civil servants shouldn't be attending them. He added, we know what a terrorist is, the law knows what a terrorist is, and the government knows what a terrorist is. Prevent attempts to stop individuals being drawn into extremism, but there have been criticisms, particularly from Muslims, that some groups are unfairly targeted. Yeah, it's going to happen. I'm sorry about that, but it's going to happen. The programme has faced particular scrutiny after some of those targeted were later been found to have no link to terrorism or radicalisation, while others have been gone on to commit such acts and have not been identified or targeted. In other words, a human system isn't perfect. Oh gosh, what a surprise. It's just the way it is, folks. The academics did not provide a comment, but a spokesman for King's College London said that the invite-only course was delivered on behalf of the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and, as with all our courses, attendees were taught by eminent experts using impartial and evidence-based resources in an environment where different theories, concepts and questions are shared to prompt discussion. Bullshit, I'm saying. Bullshit. It is always interesting to see what is. I taught the government for 11 years. I taught in the government sector, the public sector, 11 years, right? From sub cabinet, right the way down to the lowliest of the lowliest. And I can tell you now that the vast majority of trainers that did the job with me were great, but the vast majority of training was absolutely bloody appalling. There we go. The content was rubbish. Just rubbish. They picked whatever was the latest flavour, went and found websites and copied and pasted stuff and stuck it in PowerPoint. It was appalling. It is always interesting to see what is under the bonnet of government. Last week, a former civil servant and open source intelligent analyst at the Foreign Office gave us such a peek. Anna Stanley has now resigned and so was free to describe a counter-terrorism course that she and other civil servants from several departments were recently on. The course, organised by King's College London, was a moral and educational disaster. Civil servants were fed, it seems, the usual relativist pat. This is moral relativism, isn't it? One man's terrorist being another man's freedom fighter, a claim that the law of this land certainly disputes. The course skirted around Islamist terrorism, which the government and security services recognise to be the main threat to UK security, but were told a lot about far-right extremism. On the former issue, the government's review. This is fishhook theory, the swine. Where's my warrior teachers? Bloody fishhook theory in action. On the former issue, the government's reviewer of the Prevent Counter-Terrorism legislation, Sir William Shawcross, was belittled and denigrated by a course director. The lecturer's claims were thus completely contrary to government policy. I have since been informed that this academic was Peter Newman, says Anna. So it's this guy Newman. Who the hell do you think you are? You liberal lovey? Fence-sitting appeaser? More disturbing was to read that my libertarian podcaster friend Joe Rogan and I, says, Joe Rogan and I, were apparently described by this man as examples of far-right extremists. When the subject of what to do with us came up, Newman apparently accepted the fact that Rogan and I had significant online platforms. This is Douglas. He accepted that to deplatform us would cause issues, so he said society needs to find another way to suppress them. I would be most interested to know exactly what measures Newman had in mind. Does he think Rogan and I should be physically suppressed? If so, by whom? My lawyers have written to Newman and his employers at King's to find out, but it is clear that King's will have to suspend Newman if it is even hoping to clean up this mess. As it happens, he has form. 4 years ago, after an event at the German embassy, the German-born Newman made a public stink when he claimed Michael Gove had said something he had not. A recording of the event revealed that the professor had simply distorted Gove's words. Newman issued a grunging apology, but for someone who likes to talk about fake news, it was striking that his original accusation was shared thousands of times online, while his forced apology was hardly shared at all. Clearly, the professor feels deep political animus towards anyone with an opinion that differs from his own. And that, I suppose, is his right. But it is not his right to use taxpayer money to attack government appointees and private citizens, let alone to do so in a manner that is not just damaging and irresponsible, but somewhat deranged. What do you want to do with them? I've no idea. You tell me in the Dubras. Go on. Go read it. It's unreal, right? But it goes to show that these people are everywhere. They're embedded, like tick-like. Yep, embedded. They are going to have to be got out. And I'm saying that Prevent is just as good a way to do it as any others. I'll see you later.